Today's Focus Check episode is big on reviews, Johnnie, right?
Absolutely. We have the Nikon ZR.
And the Nikon ZR Lab Test.
And we have the Pixboom Spark.
And last but not least, the ASUS 6K 32-inch monitor. Let's get right into it.
Let's go.
This is Focus Check, the weekly CineTech podcast.
Welcome to episode 86 of CineD Focus Check. Let's not waste any time today because we have a lot to get through. Finally, a week of a lot of reviews, right, Johnnie?
Yes, but why? Let's waste some time. Okay, I'm joking. Of course, there's a lot to do, a lot to talk about. Finally, the Nikon ZR review is here. And actually, we are publishing in parallel our lab tests that we did together with Florian and Gunther. They worked really, really hard to bring you guys the truth about dynamic range and what else do we have here? The latitude test and of course the
rolling shutter.
But let's start with the review itself of the camera.
Let's just give an overview of what we talk about today. So that's we start with the Nikon. We move on to the Pixboom Spark. We have this first hands-on review from Gunther, who took it like this pre-production unit that we had to India to film butterflies. So we have like a short version of his little documentary. He's working on a longer one already with some nice footage. And I had a nice sit down with him about the camera because I also played around with it a little bit before we had to send it back. And then we have a review of the ASUS of an ASUS 6K 32-inch monitor. I don't know exactly the name, but
this is you really want the name? Well, the name will be PA32QCV.
Okay, well, that's the one that you test, or actually Gunther also tested. It's another right. Gunther review, and you sat down with him to talk about that. And then we'll talk about the results from last week's poll, the camera internal RAW recording, which was actually quite popular and quite some discussions and opinions on this. So I think it's worth looking at the results. We'll mention just a couple more news updates. I want to mention the LUMIX Lab 2.0 updates to this app from Panasonic because it has a really cool mode to make your custom LUT based on an image from your library, like a photo. That's pretty cool. And of course, there's some firmware updates for LUMIX cameras. And little piece I wrote about Sora 2 versus Hollywood. Like there's a huge copyright dispute going on because basically we're able to generate everything with Sora 2 when it launched, and especially that app, and like as if they didn't care about copyright. And now they're kind of backpedaling. So I dived into that a little bit. We'll also, last but not least, also mention the M5 introduction of Apple, which was introduced in the new MacBook Pro 14-inch, only 14-inch for now, and iPad Pro, and also the Vision Pro has been upgraded for the first time to the M5 chip. But let's get started with the Nikon ZR Z Cinema camera that you reviewed. Yeah. So a lot of hype around this camera. I mean, we had a lot of interest. I mean, we saw IBC was probably this, and the C50 from Canon, which you already reviewed, was probably the thing that made IBC a very popular show this year. Now, what do you make of Nikon's first foray, not first foray, but their kind of like first serious attempt at what they say merging RED technology with Nikon technology into the new ZZ Cinema line?
There's a lot to say, and I will try to put all my thoughts together in a way that you guys can benefit. I think, it's not for nothing that I gave the title for this review, Born Cinematic, or maybe not, because at the end of the day, what we can see here, and this is almost like the bottom line, is a very average camera. The Nikon ZR is a very average camera with a beautiful looking footage. I know. It's really contradicting.
What makes it average?
Everything about it is very average. And we will dive into the lab test results in a second. There is nothing there to rave about on one hand. And I think what really brought me to be so agitated is the fact that Nikon marketing in a way is doing injustice to the camera, trying to push the word cinema and cinematic everywhere.
But isn't everybody doing that? I mean, we have the...
Yes, but not to that extent. I think, I've been reviewing, like you, we've been reviewing equipment for so long. I never seen such a dedicated effort to push a camera and call it cinematic in such a long time. And I want to ask you, and also you guys, I mean, at the end, what makes a camera cinematic? What is a cinematic camera? At the end of the day, this is really just a tool. And of course, you need the lenses, and you need, it's about the movement, the storytelling, filters, all of those things that eventually will make a piece of a story cinematic in a way. So I think to try to push a camera here and put the word, I mean, I put a link for a Nikon USA press release. I think there are more than 30 times there, the word cinema/cinematic. I mean, of course, the camera is Z Cinema or the line, but this is a little bit too much.
Yeah, but to be fair, I mean, we have this, not trying to, I'm just observing. We had the same thing with Sony, right? If you look at the FX line, which is the cinema line from Sony, which of course is now
everybody trying to sell you an illusion, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Everybody is trying to sell you this cinematic illusion, but I just want you guys to know it's not that you're gonna pick up the camera tomorrow, switch it on, start to record, and suddenly you will feel like the greatest DP in the world. That will not happen. Okay, but I want to go back because you asked me what makes it so average, and for example, just to highlight some of the things, this camera has 3 types of RAW, which is really great. It has ProRes RAW, it has NRAW, which is Nikon's own RAW, and of course the R3D, which is Red RAW. We'll touch when we talk about the lab test in a second, which one is better to work with. But if you decide not to work with RAW from whatever reason, and you want to go one step down, you have ProRes HQ, which is really great, but still consuming quite a lot of data. And then you have H.265, in 8 and 10 bit, but only 420, not 422. And then at the bottom, you can still even find H.264 8 bit. And that's it. So what this camera is really missing is a proper codec for everyday usage. For those who just want to take the camera out and do some other stuff with this, because otherwise you will see it. You will be stuck with, I'm daring to say, poorly implemented H.265, because maybe in order to make the results a little bit better, there's so much noise reduction going on the H.265 implementation in this camera. And then on the other hand, ProRes HQ looks nice, but as I said,
you mean in order to make the dynamic range results look better?
Of the H.265. Again, yeah. I'm separating from RAW for a second. So all in all, it's a Nikon Z6 III. And the only difference, there are 2 main differences here. One, the Nikon Z6 III has a viewfinder. And of course, on the other hand, that camera, the ZR, has the red RAW. But just to know, I mean, I'm talking about the main differences. Of course, there's 32-bit float and a bigger screen, but
I think we should just add that it's called Red NE, so it is not the same red RAW as you have in the bigger real red cameras, which is it's a different. It's a 12-bit wrapper. Right. And we also, because we had, especially for the lab test, also for the review, we had some questions to Nikon, and I have to say that they were very responsive to answer. Part of it was about the implementation of the red RAW codec here, and we will talk about this in a second. But the way, I mean, there's a whole document. We put the link also in the lab test for the explanation of how this RAW codec works. And it's important to know that what they had to do in a way is adapt the codec to the processor in this camera, which is fine. This is okay. And again, I have no complaint here about the implementing the codec, the red RAW codec here. That's fine. But I'm just saying, don't build on big illusions here when it comes to cinematic footage or anything. But I want to move forward, and first of all, of course, also highlight what is nice and what is good. So first of all,
So 32-bit float audio recording is really great. I think it's only Holy Land that allows a transmission of 32-bit into the camera, but then of course
with the LUMIX Max 2, which we're going to review as well.
Yeah. So just take into account that of course it's still safer to record on the transmitter because then you avoid any dropouts. But other than that, it's nice to have this. The 4-inch LCD screen, some would like it. Me personally, I'm sorry, but it doesn't really work for me. I'm with glasses or contact lenses, so I can't judge exposure. And
but what do you make of the size? I mean, compared to other cameras, I think I was quite impressed.
Outdoor,
leave your eyesight aside.
Outdoor, you can't really judge what to do. You really have to work with the LUT.
Because it's not bright enough, or
it's not bright enough, and for crucial focusing or exposure, it's again touching menu and overall watching footage. Okay, this is good and it's really nice, but and it's a strong selling point for some. But I think this is not something that I will base my buying decision based on that thing alone. Yeah.
But it's not. I know you don't like to use monitors, but consider people who do, and a lot of people put 5-inch monitors on all kinds of mirrorless cameras that have a 3.2-inch built-in monitor. Do you think that this, like, if you could work with a monitor, is this something that you could avoid actually using an external monitor?
Again, I'm not accustomed to properly judge the footage and exposure and even framing. For those who are really used to work only with a monitor, I guess they can skip a monitor altogether.
Yeah, that was
my advice is really work with Rec 709 LUT on the footage, because otherwise it's quite flat and it's very hard to judge stuff, especially in daytime, like outdoor daytime. That's my impression. Other than that, when you come to the actual handling of the camera, it's very thin. Yeah, there is no really grip for that camera. So you really have to have a cage if you planning to use this camera mostly for video. I would definitely recommend using the small rig cage for this camera. It worked really, really good for me. It adds the kind of the proper grip that you need here. There is also a way to attach because the camera has only micro HDMI. I was working with EVF, the Kinefinity Eagle HDMI, so I could connect micro HDMI and also lock it, so it was fine. So all in all, the cage is essential if you want to work like for video work. By the way, the way that I decided to review the camera was also with these are film Vespid 2 lenses, because those lenses also won our Best of Show award during IBC, and it was a good chance to work with them. So I dedicated in my review a paragraph about those. They're excellent. For the price, they're really excellent. It's really amazing. They're very clean. They're very capable.
Very sharp, right? I mean,
very sharp. I mean, if that was a real job, I would definitely use some types of diffuser, like a Black Promised 1/8, just to reduce the sharpness. For the review itself, I left it as is because I wanted also the people to get just to see how the footage looks like. But back to the camera itself. So I think everything about, as I said, is rather average, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions if you have, and otherwise I will move to the lab test.
Well, I think it's all connected. I think we can already talk about the lab test, but because I think what people were most excited about is two things, right? These implementation of those RAW codecs in a 12-bit RAW in a camera that costs only $2,200. Yeah. So of course, I mean, there's some trade-offs. I guess I wonder one question about how did you, because you did work with an external viewfinder, one thing that I immediately saw when I talked to our friend Francesco at IBC about the camera, who has used it before, the kind of hinge here of the monitor is very inflexible, so you can't move it out like you can, for example, with Canon and Panasonic cameras now. Was this an issue for you? Because I can see that this is...
I'm not working with the monitor, so I have no issue
so
at
you
all.
just left it there?
I left it as because also one thing is to remember, Yeah, I mean, I worked with the viewfinder. That was very easy for me. The monitor was just there if I needed it.
Yeah.
What I saw also, you have to tweak a little bit the settings in order to have both on. Otherwise, automatically, when you will connect the HDMI to the EVF, the monitor will go blank. So you have to remember there's a way in the menu to change this. Yeah, I mean, other than that, the autofocus is fine. Nothing.
Well, you didn't use it for these cameras.
No, but I also checked some Nikon lenses. It worked okay. The IBIS, I think, is a bit too weak.
Okay.
What I did really like is the 4K 119 frames per second.
119?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And then maybe there are 2 digits afterwards. But the quality is very nice. I mean, it really upscaled very nice to the 6K, because that camera is, of course, full frame 6Ks. But please remember, when you work on the 4K 119 frames per second, the image is cropped. So it can help if you want, but the footage actually came out quite nice. I mean, I was very impressed with this, and of course, the big advantage that you can still record this high frame rate with the red codec, with the R3D. When it comes to editing, Resolve can already. It's easy to edit the footage from Resolve. The Adobe Premiere, only the beta version is currently supporting the R3D NE that we talked about. Otherwise, the normal one is still is not supporting. So I had to edit with Adobe Premiere Beta. Interestingly enough, and this is something that we also asked Nikon about, when you record on the Nikon RAW, not to confuse you guys, with the .NEV, Adobe Premiere thinks it's a red codec.
Is it?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, it's thinking it's a red codec. So actually, we asked Nikon, of course. So guys, please tell us what's going on here. Why Adobe Premiere thinks it's a red codec? What we could understand from their answers, maybe there's a bug, or in any case, they will introduce a log converter. So actually, it will convert back to NRAW.
I mean, in general, this whole RAW situation, there has been a lot of chatter online, which was basically people changing the ending of the NEF files to R3D, and then being able to kind of treat it like red. What came out in the lab test? What can we make of this?
So what we could see in the lab test very clearly, that the image. I mean, it's, we didn't really fiddle with changing endings like the ending of the files, but what we could see easily, that when we compare the 3 raw files, first of all, the way we did it, we set up the light on you, just almost by clipping your front head
as usual,
as usual. And then we saw that on ProRes RAW and on Nikon RAW, when you flip between the raw the raw codecs, it's all good. But then when you actually turn to red, you are immediately clipped here. Yeah, that's right. So obviously, the NRAW and the R3D are not working the same. And we asked Nikon what's going on here. So obviously, again, this is to go through the red internal pipeline in order to protect the highlights. You will have to, if you work with the red, you just have to monitor your highlights, and that's it. So I know you guys want to know more about the results. So first of all, let's talk about the rolling shutter. So
but let's just talk about this a little bit. I mean, Gunther called this, what you just mentioned, a bit of a strange implementation of the built-in highlight recovery feature that we know from red.
Yeah,
and it should become active if one of the color channels is already clipped, but as can be seen in the ProRes RAW implementation on my skin, all color channels should be intact at this exposure level. Hence, this fact reduces the highlight latitude of the red code RAW NE by about 1 stop when compared to ProRes RAW and also compared to NRAW. We need to lower the sensor exposure to get out of the highlight recovery region and keep the skin tones intact, this will definitely penalize shadow recovery. Hence, I don't think we're getting the full potential with this implementation of R3D in the Nikon ZR. So actually, that means anybody shouldn't use this codec as it is right now.
No. Okay, so I'm jumping to the end and saying that between the 3-row codecs, the red row is the best.
Really, even though we have this problem?
Yeah, we think that when it comes to color fidelity and latitude, we still like this codec best. You just have to watch your the highlights basically. And when I worked with the camera, it's not that I had major issues with this. Actually, it's very flexible. It's all good.
But it's important to note that actually your exposure changes when you change codecs.
Yeah, that you have to know. But I guess when you start a project, you kind of locked on one codec and that's it. So, Nino, do you want to read Nikon's response for this highlight thing?
Yes. So we did reach out to Nikon with this observation, and what they responded was, they said, what you have faced is what we have designed. The reason is a difference of highlight clipping points between N-Log and R3D and E. Therefore, when you shoot using R3D and E, you need to set the exposure accordingly to the clipping point of R3D and E. Besides, to prioritize reducing noise in dark areas, highlight has been shifted one stop to low light. The actual image sensor sensitivity differs by one stop between R3D and E and other codecs.
Yeah. So, two quick things about this. In general, because the native ISO is 800 and 6400, we definitely recommend people to work at 800. You will gain a bit more latitude and dynamic range here. That's one thing. And the second thing, because this is a partially stacked sensor, we presume that that's the same sensor that Panasonic is using with the LUMIX S1 II. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting to see how the companies are actually treating that in a different way. Because the way that Panasonic is doing it right now is simply better. They also give you the choice, because you can either enhance the dynamic range on the expense of rolling shutter, or turn off a certain feature and then have a bit of a lower dynamic range, but on the other hand have a better rolling shutter. Here, Nikon is not doing this. Yeah, so. If you want the best dynamic range results, we still think that the Nikon R3D is the best choice here, and the same for latitude. That's between the 3-row codecs. That's what we recommend, and we also recommend to try to avoid H.265. We clearly see that there's so much. You can't really hide it. There's so much noise reduction that being implemented in order to make the results better, that it makes no sense.
As we know, as people who have followed our lab tests for years probably know that the way to kind of make a dynamic range result look better is always by implementing more noise reduction. But we always can uncover this by our latitude test, which is basically over and under exposing an image and then pushing it back to normal, and then sometimes in post applying noise reduction to see if the image is still usable, because that's a real use case scenario. So you sometimes have to over or underexpose something in real life situations, and then, but if you are able to push that back, it's fine.
Yeah,
so
out of the three, this is actually the most important test.
Yes.
I have to say that's really a torture test.
It's also the most complicated one to do.
Yeah, that's right.
So we always use the same lights, we always use the same distance, everything, same lens with all the cameras. And we can see here, I mean, this is the example with the R3D at ISO 800, 5 stops under, pushed back. It's already a little bit problematic here. And what do we say? Exposure latitude.
I mean, I can't remember.
They clean up nicely. He says.
It's clean up, that's. I mean, if you go to the article itself and you will see, you will come up with the same. You will understand why we come up with the conclusion that the Nikon, the red RAW is the one to use if you want to make the most out of this camera. One thing that also we test is of course the rolling shutter, and that's maybe one of the good things about that camera, that for full frame camera, 9.4 milliseconds in 6K 25p, when using the R3D and E codec, that's quite good, and it will get even better when we crop, when we kind of check the DX or APS-C mode. It's even better. But
it's a great result, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good result. And of course, if you want to learn more, I set up with Gunther for a very, very friendly conversation, just to explain a bit more about why do we do those lab tests, how we do those, and talk a little bit about the results that we are getting. And, Nikon is claiming 15 plus stops of dynamic range for this camera, and the reality is so far away. Yeah, with the 10 point something and 11.2 that we are getting.
It's like it's that's why we make these tests, because it's
Absolutely.
meaningless if you apply so much noise reduction to it, and only the latitude test will actually uncover the truth.
Yeah. So again, just to conclude this all, average camera, you can see this with very average results, test results. On the other hand, gorgeous images, especially when you use the R3D codec.
But when you say average camera but gorgeous images, isn't that making it a good camera then?
For the price, for 2,100, it's a good camera. I personally, I'm not so sure that if you have the Nikon Z6 III, you have to rush and change the camera. If you are from a different camp, if you're using a different manufacturer, maybe this is something to consider, especially if you are a Sony user, in the sense that the Z mount is very flexible. It's very easy to adapt with an adapter to other lenses, or also E-mount lenses. But
it's a starting point. No, I mean, this is probably going to be their entry level, guessing, Z cinema camera. So let's see what
I would say. If Nikon, again, sometimes we are questioning different questions how manufacturers are moving forward, but if I can be humble here and advise, I think people will be okay to pay a certain amount of money for a firmware update that will give you 24p, that will give you anamorphic D-squeeze, that will give you open gate.
You mean DCI 24p?
Yeah, DCI also. This camera doesn't have DCI, doesn't have any open gate, nothing. It's 16:9. I mean, it's a cinematic camera. Afterwards, no 24p, no anamorphic, no open gate, no DCI. I think there's, not even false colors. Yeah, so I think for that type of firmware update, I guess people will be okay to pay if you want to make a bit more of that camera. And for the next version, if ever they will consider to do anything, maybe to think about a camera body that is a bit more flexible, that has a touching point like the FX2, FX3, FX30, C50, of course HDMI, although the philosophy behind this camera that everything is kind of built in, you don't need anything out of the camera. That's why there's no USB-C recording. That's why the micro HDMI for now. But still, some of us would love to work with viewfinder or connect external monitor, and then of course a full-size HDMI is a bit better.
Last question before we move on. Provocative question: do you think, considering that the red Nikon acquisition is now 1.5 years behind us, do you think that this is something that they came up right after? Just we have to make one product to kind of really launch the two brands together, and then it's basically based on an existing Nikon camera with the implementation of a version of Red RAW. So they kind of, of course.
I don't think that any decision to make any camera can be rushed, because there's always a process behind it.
Yeah. Of course, but
so I think again it's a good start. Can't tell you that it was like let's do something just to show that we are together. I think it's a good attempt. It's a nice attempt. At the end, you can see it also in the menu. This is a very much photo video camera. This is that's not a cinema camera per se. So this is something. I just hope that this is not the last attempt. I hope that this is a beginning of a really new line of cameras that is absolutely legit, and I think users can benefit, especially that we see that Nikon decided to price it for now in a very aggressive way. And but one thing is for sure, the next product from Nikon will be some cinema lenses or fixed focal length lenses. We saw already prototype of those lenses. I'm very curious to see what are they going to compete. Are they going to compete the higher end or the mid-range or the lower end? Because there's so many good lenses out there right now, and I want to see what will be the benefit of their own lenses.
Now we see red features in Nikon cameras. I wonder if we will still see new red cameras at some point under the really red brand with some Nikon features like autofocus in, so that's something to be questioned because we see, it's Nikon branded, but at the back it says Nikon and red. Will they forever keep the red brand, or will they be integrated at some point? It's only.
I think it's always confusing. It's the same with Fujifilm, Fujinon. It's like sometimes you.
But they at least cameras and lenses.
But
two
still,
camera companies.
it's also from the editorial perspective. It's never too easy for SEO if it's still relevant.
Course, yeah.
But I think they will probably keep it in a kind of separate lines. And from time to time, when it's work for the company, they will merge and do things together.
We'll see. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Johnny. And let's move on to the Pixboom review. Actually, that also, like almost everything we talk about this week, involved Gunther. And he made a very nice documentary in India.
But let's start with a little story. It's like, Johnny, do you have a camera that can shoot really high frame? Actually, we do have a prototype of the Pixboom, but are you sure that you want to take it to India?
Well, actually, it was just before IBC. Just literally the day before we left, he texted us like, oh, actually, I have this trip coming up to India and I want to film butterflies. I mean, he went there for business and always takes to take some time to film something nice. And then...
But that's never too...
Business unrelated to filming, right? Yeah. And then he was like, do you have a high-speed camera? And we know like everybody has been starved for high-speed cameras for many years. I mean, we've had it's almost the development stopped. And, people remember still the FS700 from Sony, which was, I think, how many years ago? 10 years ago, whatever. And that did, I think, up to 480 frames in a very bad quality or 240 frames in HD. And then you had to use this bulky, expensive external recorder to actually record raw or have a better quality version, and it was very cumbersome to use, and nothing really happened. I mean, you had some of those higher speed versions then implemented into even the compact cameras from Sony, but other than that, there was nothing. I mean, we usually
what Graham has, I forgot.
Well, the FreeFly Amber
exactly.
Specialized camera, but still it with mixed reviews in terms of like consistency of the quality, but in general, I'm talking about really accessible high speed has not been a thing. I mean, we have much better codecs now. We have better dynamic range, latitude. We have global shutter cameras. We have very high resolution. We can shoot RAW internally. The one thing where not much happened was basically high speed recording.
And
it's
we were always
almost
wondering because it's like such a niche, but a desirable one. Everybody love to see lives in slow motion.
But I recorded a nice conversation with Gunther based on this review that he did. Like this footage, and we talked about all those things, so check that out. We have the link in the show notes, of course, of that video. And he mentioned that one of the big challenges of high-speed cameras is in general it needs to be an extremely fast sensor readout, because if you think about it, if you shoot something with, let's say, 1,000 frames per second, that means your shutter needs to be at least 1/2000th of a second. That has so many implications. So that will mean you need a rolling shutter that is at least as fast as that. You will need ideally it should even be a global shutter, because of course then, that's not an issue. You need a lot of light. And we all know that you need a lot of light in order to expose for this short amount of time. And you also need very fast storage to actually deal with the data that's coming out of this. And all of those things together, has so far always meant that you need a specialized camera that's really made for this. And that is what the Pixboom also is. Now, we talked to the team at IBC. You did a very nice interview with the CTO, who is one of the people who founded the company. Very young team, very motivated team. It also, like other high-speed cameras in the market, came out of science. Really a research project that they did, I think, for his PhD thesis. And then they decided to make it into a company. Now, the interesting thing is, of course, the big competitor in the market, Vision Research with the Phantom Flex 4K, that camera has not been updated in 12 years. And it seems like they're completely, if you look on their website, you don't even see much mention of the cinema stuff anymore. It's really about scientific work, cameras that shoot millions of frames per second just to show something in the macroscopic department for really science and research. And it probably didn't pay off for them. So nobody really kind of went into this except for FreeFly with the Ember, but then at a much bigger, in a much more scientific way, now Pixboom. Now the cool thing is they are using a partially like a stacked sensor, which makes it more light sensitive. They claim that it's 4 times more light sensitive than the competition. We can just assume they probably mean the Phantom Flex 4K. Now it still needs a lot of light, but I can tell from the few tests that I made in the studio that it needs definitely less light than a Phantom Flex. If you compare that, I still had to. I just sat here in the studio and did a couple of things like this when we had it for another day after Gunther came back from India, and you have to blast this thing with light for sure, but it is. If you go outside, if you can definitely get nice exposure in the sun. So I tried the typical kind of slow motion stuff that always looks beautiful, right? Always.
Well, it depends. If you're in a relationship, you can do this. If you're before a relationship,
I'm married, so
exactly.
I hope my wife doesn't see this.
I would really advise people not to move their faces in slow motion.
It's funny that it looks like very violent, but actually I just was shaking my head like this. And you can, like Gunther said in the review, you're really freezing time. But let's look at some more pretty things. I think we can just take a look at his butterflies.
By the way,
look at my face here. Look at my face. That's also nice.
But when Gunther talked about the butterflies, of course, some of the things like pre-recording and so on, like buffering and so on, were still not implemented in the camera.
Yeah,
it was a really a prototype. But what was his highlight as far as he concerned? He really liked it, or
the great thing about this camera is, yes, it doesn't have pre-recording yet. Like the typical high-speed cameras. You kind of, they have a buffer and they have a storage, and the buffer fills up within a couple of seconds because you're shooting so many frames. This is usually very fast storage that's built into the camera. That's like how the Phantom Flex works. You buy this camera with a certain amount of buffer, and basically you pay a lot more if you want the version with a higher buffer. Now this camera doesn't have a buffer. It's continuous recording, which is completely new in this field, and it means that you can work with this camera like with a normal camera, for better or worse. Worse, why? Because right now it doesn't have pre-recording, and that's a problem if you film wildlife, because
you can wait for hours for this certain action.
Yeah, and you're just wasting space, and it takes a lot of time to actually look for footage. Because if you think about it, like everything, if something is 20 times slow motion, it means that 1 second becomes 20 seconds. And setting up, pressing record, waiting for the butterfly to leave, and it only does that after 5 or 10 seconds, means that you have to wait for a lot of minutes to actually have anything to happen when you're playing back the footage. And you also means you're wasting a lot more space on your memory.
And this is even with trained butterflies.
Exactly. And so, for example, we only had one SSD. They only were able to give us one SSD, and that's 2.5 terabytes. If you shoot at 1,000 frames per second in 4K, now I have to say there's a lot of different ways you're really flexible with this camera. So basically, it's a 3x2 sensor, and in order to increase the frame rate, you drop resolution, you crop in, you can do up to I think 1,800 something frames in HD, but then you have really a cropped window. And you're also cropping the height of the sensor. So if you shoot, I don't know the exact measurements, but if you shoot 16:9, I think you can go up to 1,000 frames in 4K, but then even higher if you go slimmer and slimmer. You can shoot anamorphic because there is an open gate mode, so that's pretty cool. But it always comes at the sacrifice, like you use more sensor area, you have less frame rate basically, but you're completely flexible in the menu. That's amazing. You can kind of adjust those things freely, almost on a frame basis. And that's really cool, right? You don't have these set kind of things. So it can be really adjusted to what you have in front of the camera, because sometimes, like you see, he filmed most of the butterfly shots at 480 frames per second. Like if you
to match the frame, the frame that you wanted. No, that's right.
But also in general, you have to. It's always like a trade-off between storage and how fast is something moving and so on. It all comes with experience, I think, and basically so the challenge is you don't have pre-recording, you don't have end trigger recording. End trigger recording is a technology that you have typically in these cameras where it basically is constantly filling the buffer. And let's say the buffer is 7 seconds or 10 seconds. You press the button when the action in front of the lens finally happened, and then it will save the last 10 seconds. That's the way to usually do this for wildlife. There's also mid trigger, which is kind of like in the middle, right? It's going back 5 seconds and it's going forward 5 seconds. Also, again, this comes with experience because it's nerve-wracking. I mean, it's really nerve-wracking. You're filming something, and that's when I filmed something years ago in South Africa. It's basically you wait something to happen. You know that you have to press this button now, otherwise it's gone. And it's literally gone within seconds. But if you press it too early, you might miss the end of it. So it's good that there is mid-trigger because you're always tempted to do this. Now, we don't have this yet in this camera because it's a beta version, so he still managed to get these images. But it also means that you're filling up the card very quickly. Just for comparison, if you shoot full resolution 4K at 1,000 frames or 1,800 frames in HD, you will fill this up in like 7-8 minutes. So it's 20. I think it's around 20 minutes if you do this, but it's nothing. Yeah, it can happen very quickly, especially because you will always have a lot of unusable stuff.
So what is Gunther's conclusion after using the camera?
It's amazing. It's amazing for what you get for the money. I mean, when I talk about what you get for the money, this was a Kickstarter campaign that has now ended, and I think it originally started at $8,000. Then it went up a little bit, and I see that now on the website you can still pre-order it for $10,000. They say that the retail price will be $13,000. That's probably because of whatever cut a retailer will take. But now you can still order it on their website for $10,000, which is compared to what a Phantom Flex costs a bargain. Now, because I think we're talking about at least $60,000-$70,000 for a usable package.
Any downsides that he?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there is. It wasn't ready. Like, this is not a full review. It's like any of the physical buttons didn't work on the camera. Yeah. Only one record button worked. You couldn't even look at the footage on the screen. You needed to use an external viewfinder or a monitor. But you were able to play it back in the camera, which is something that's not normal always for those cameras as well. That was nice. We saw some issues with, there is like a very fine line in the middle of the footage, which, let me try and find it. If you look, I don't know if you see it in the compression of this video, but here there is this line which is where the sensor is stitched. Now, this is something we reached out to them that they're working on, and it's basically the different amplitudes that are applied now, but this is something that will definitely be ironed out for the final firmware and the final product. But it is there, and it's something that is very hard to get rid of because in grading you will need to be really on a pixel level to fix this. But it's there now, right? In general, yeah, he was amazed by the size. It's very small. It is like it's like a Komodo. or like a Pixis 12K 6K. Very convenient size. It means that you can really take it anywhere and film something spontaneously. The good thing about high speed is, of course, you don't really need to use a tripod, because if you need to move fast for nature stuff in general, but it doesn't matter because everything is slowed down to a halt. You're really freezing time, and that means that you will never see that you didn't use a tripod. It makes you much more flexible when filming.
How about the noise? Because it has those fans and they're so noisy.
In theory, you could use this as your main camera because it shoots 24, 25, 30 frames.
And global shutter, of course, which is
global
great.
shutter. So you can do that. However, it has a very noisy built-in fan because of the heat that is coming out when you shoot at these high frame rates. So it doesn't have, and therefore probably it doesn't have any type of audio input, so you cannot actually record. However, it does have timecode and genlog, I think, so you could hook it up to something and just sync it up. But it is, it's very noisy. I mean, you can clean up that noise, of course, but I wouldn't use it as my main camera because of that.
Well, maybe, of course, there's some silent fans in the market. Maybe they will consider to change.
I don't
those.
think it's possible because, I mean, just if you think about the heat that is generated in this, I think. But the good thing is, even in these humid, hot conditions in India, Gunther did not have any issues, so it never overheated or anything like that. So they did a good job with the cooling, and
we will of course test it in our lab test when the final version is here.
We did test this one, just a preliminary test. It's also mentioned in the review. Now, I mean, they claim something like 13 stops. Again, this is not there. This is only after applying noise reduction. I think, I don't know off the top of my head, but we're more talking about 9-10 stop max, which you really have to protect your highlights in this camera. The highlights are easily blown out.
But again, we did it more for our knowledge.
Yes.
And this is not really, this is with grain and salt, meaning we will test the camera again when the final version is there.
Yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't expect wonders. It's a very normal result for cameras like this. At this, this high frame rate has to come at a sacrifice at some point, and it's fine. You know, like it produces beautiful images. It is definitely, you know, like it's not meant to compete with a normal cinema camera in that sense. Okay. If you know how to expose properly, you will not run into issues, and you can clean up that noise. That's important.
Nice.
So that's, you know, but there is definitely, you know, like there is not as much latitude as there is with a cinema camera that is made for normal frame rate shooting. So that's how it is. Yeah, but very great product, and we can confirm it's not vaporware. It actually exists and it works. And they, I think, are still on track. That's what they say, to deliver the first batch in January.
So in your review, together with Gunther, you're showing some images, like a very short version of the documentary that he is producing, but of course, there will be a much longer version later this year, but good to see that he managed to pull out something.
This is about butterflies. He went on to film something about damselflies, which will be the longer film that he's going to release. And of course, we're going to run an article on that as well.
Nice.
Once it's done. Let's move on to another review, and that is another review about a monitor. And this time, we're really into reviewing monitors now, especially.
Well, we neglected it for such a long time, and we started with ASUS. They have such a huge or big selections of monitors, and we're really trying to make it a bit easier for you guys and also for us to understand what we're dealing with. We tested the ASUS ProArt display PA32QCV. This is a high-resolution 6K monitor, and again, together with Gunther, because it's easy, everything which is a little bit more scientific. Gunther really likes to touch and try, and he's also went through the calibration and everything. And I think it's safe to say, the thing is, if you buy this specific monitor as a standalone, and you didn't try an OLED monitor before, I think this one you're really gonna like it. The results are good, actually.
This is an OLED?
This is not an OLED. This is an
LCD. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Or IPS. How do you call it?
LCD.
That's right.
Yeah, backlit. Yeah.
So it is IPS panel. It is a very nice monitor. It has a lot of space. The resolution is really high, and I have to say when I connected my editing laptop to it to watch some of the footage that I captured with the Nikon ZR, it really looked beautiful. The thing is, of course, we had to go back and also mention the review that Gunther did with the 4K monitor from ASUS, which is the OLED monitor, where the blacks are much more saturated and there's less light leak or anything. So all in all, this is the 6K monitor is a very nice monitor for overall, meaning if you do some grading,
everyday work,
it's okay, every day treating photos and so on. But if you want to be more precise about editing or video editing, we still recommend the 4K OLED monitor, also from ASUS. So it's not a matter of resolution, let's call it, but it's more a matter of accuracy and color accuracy.
And of course, the deep blacks, I mean, is
in the OLED monitor, but
exactly.
that's on the 4K and not on the not on this one. But again, the results here are good. And also there's of course a price difference. This is a $1,400 a monitor, and if you compare it to the 4K monitor, which is an OLED, this is $1,900. So it depends. If you do have the funds to go one step higher for something which is more a bit better for editing, we recommend to go with the OLED. But if you really need something that you can use for family, gaming,
I think it's just the resolution at 32-inch. I wouldn't want to use a 32-inch monitor with 4K resolution because it's just for normal work, for everyday work, because the resolution is too low at this size. But for previewing footage, of course, it's amazing. I think it's probably not an either-or decision. It's more like, what do you use it for?
Exactly, and how much money you want to spend on it. So if you take those two factors, like in terms of funds and what you're going to use it for, then I think it's quite easy to decide. But all in all, it's a nice monitor. I think when you plug the picture, and one thing that I like with most of the ProArt, ASUS ProArt monitors that we are currently reviewing, you just need one USB cable to power it and also move the display
port. Yeah.
Exactly. That's really, really great, and it makes it so easy and so effortless.
Well, not only that, but also, I mean, the monitor that I use, basically, I get the power on the laptop from the monitor.
Okay.
So the display is connected via a display port to my computer. I just close it, and I don't need to use a charger because I get the power from the monitor all the time.
Sure, but then your monitor is connected to the main.
Of course.
So you can go both ways also with the ASUS. If your laptop or computer is connected to the main, then you can power the monitor with one single cable. But of course, you can do this vice versa.
Yeah.
But the main thing is that you need only one connection to the main, and then with the USB-C.
Does it have? Is it also working as a hub for USB 4
it has,
or USB 3?
Yes, it has for USB-C. I think there are two connectors at the back. Can't remember by heart.
Useful.
But it of course, it's very useful, and
just not to use another cable, another port for as a hub, basically.
Yeah. So all in all, check out our review. We recommend this monitor, and we liked it.
Good. Okay, that's it with reviews for this week. But we have a couple more things to talk about. Now let's move on to our camera internal RAW recording for video. Actually, that's a little bit related to the Nikon ZR, I guess. Last week we asked you the question, how important is that for you? Let's take a look at the results. So the exact question was, how important is camera internal RAW video recording for your workflow? And 51% are saying internal RAW recording is an essential part of my workflow. That's interesting that 51% absolutely
I'm one of them.
Want it. I mean,
I'm
need
one of
it.
those guys, yeah.
Then another 23%. In total, by the way, we had almost 500 votes.
Yeah.
So 23% are saying, I would love to learn and explore more about RAW recording. So you see a lot of people are on the edge.
That's very encouraging. I love when people want to learn more. And that also means for us, as a media outlet, we need to do more about
let's do a raw course on MZ then.
Exactly.
Yeah. But so basically that for me sounds like people that probably have cameras that can't do it yet, maybe, and they're thinking about jumping.
Can do, but not so sure
or not
what
using
to do with it.
Yeah. And then also 15% said I couldn't care less about internal RAW recording. Fair enough.
Missing guys.
Well, depends what you do. And then another almost 11% said no internal RAW recording. I'm not purchasing the camera. Wow. So this, I would say, is overwhelmingly in favor of internal RAW recording. Now, we had a lot of interesting comments here. Maybe we want to just look at a few of them.
Yeah.
Somebody said, is this a market research question farmed out to outlets? No, this is genuinely something we were interested in. We are not being paid by anybody to make this question. It's just something that is very common now to get cameras that do internal RAW recording, and we wondered because, of course, there are still manufacturers and cameras out there that are still being sold.
Two main camera manufacturers. I think it's Sony and Fujifilm that doesn't allow internal RAW recording.
Yes, except in Sony just for their top end Burano and Venice, but other than that, nothing. Yeah, and Fuji, none of them actually.
Yeah.
Video, of course, video RAW. So. A lot of interesting questions there. Also, saying that it's also brand specific. Of course, if you're shooting Blackmagic design, you're shooting B-RAW as a default, and you don't really have a choice. Fair enough. I mean, there used to be a choice. There's not much choice anymore because you're always shooting a Blackmagic RAW.
Maybe the choice will come now when the Resolve is supporting again ProRes RAW, so maybe they will also give ProRes RAW recording next to Blackmagic. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean they have this they introduced this only for one camera now, which is the Pocket 4K.
Exactly.
But it's still RAW. I mean, it's like you don't have a choice. You have to shoot RAW with these cameras. I think that's his point being. It's. The question is always, is it an overkill for your shoot? Like how much footage do you produce? What kind of RAW is it? It's also very important, like what type of compression are we talking about? And what is the end result? I think one of the things with this camera, I don't know what you think, but it's like how much footage can you fit on a 1 terabyte card in any of the RAW codecs here?
Yeah, again, for complete transparency, we have those 2 terabyte capacity CF Express cards from Angelbird that we are working with, and then for the type of projects that we're doing here, it's not that we ever thought that we're running out of space. Yeah, so I can't remember by the minutes. I'm just saying that was not a concern, and this should not also be the ultimate concern when you decide to work with RAW. I think what you have to remember, you are bypassing a lot of the restrictions that a compressed recording format is imposing on you. Yeah, so this is one thing to remember. And the second thing, the flexibility that you have afterwards when it comes to editing is really great. Why is it important? Again, and that was part of the argument in the my argument in the when I wrote the article, when I wrote the poll. If you're a big production house, maybe it's less obvious. But if you are an independent filmmaker or working on a smaller production, sometimes you need this extra safety net. You need to save yourself from doing mistakes. And it can happen when we're doing things a bit faster today. It can happen that from whatever reason you didn't set up the white balance correctly, you didn't expose correctly, and so on. The same like with audio, yeah? So if you're a one-man band and your type of project allows this, and it's not that you're going to record, I don't know, wildlife forever, which then, of course, it's not so practical to shoot RAW. Just consider RAW, because RAW recording eventually can really be your best friend.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of choice, right? The answer is easy for most people, I think, because do you want the choice? Yes, everybody wants the choice. Like, even if you don't use it, you want to have the option for those. Even if you shoot 90% things where it's talking heads under controlled lighting situations and you shoot 2-hour interviews at a time, you will not need RAW. But for these, 5% of shoots where you actually need it, you want to have the option in your camera. So I think that's very simple to answer. And I also think that we will look back at this poll in a few years and kind of chuckle because, I mean, think about photographers, right? Nobody in their right mind would shoot photos in JPEG as a professional photographer because of the flexibility you have with RAW. And we're talking in this case 16-bit RAW with a lot of color depth and a lot more flexibility even than most RAW video codecs. I mean, it's incredible what you can pull out of a RAW photo. And we do it all the time. But for video, we're just not used to it. And I think as prices, now that the processing is there, and now that as finally the prices of storage comes to a point where this is feasible, I think we will see this in every camera in the future, and it's not even going to be a question anymore. I mean, we see it even in smartphones, and it's only going to be a matter of time until this is an absolute standard feature.
Yeah. And I think we had a poll in the past. Imagine if there's also some possibility to record internally, meaning having a internal storage device as a backup solution. So you can start there and move to external CF Express card or anything else if needed. Yeah, but this is also a learning phase for us. I think that in general, if you're shooting news, of course, you don't need any RAW. You just shoot with whatever there is, basically, which is always funny, For the most watchable stuff, you actually use the less quality.
But there is also no grading usually or anything like that.
That's right. And if you're doing things that you do care about in the sense of either it's a one-time thing or it's a matter that you need the flexibility later in grading, you will probably very much like working with RAW.
Yeah. Good. Let's move on some pieces of news. So we just mentioned Panasonic also, but which, by the way, they have internal RAW recording. You can record RAW in the latest LUMIX full-frame cameras and so on. But they just pushed firmware updates to their cameras, which we'll talk about in a second, but also an update to their apps. And they have two apps which are quite interesting, I have to say, the LUMIX Lab and also LUMIX Flow. Now, LUMIX Lab is very interesting now because they introduced something called Magic LUT, which is something I really want to try out. So basically what you can do now is it will look at your photo library on your phone, if you give it access to that, and put in a reference image and then kind of generate automatically a LUT based on that reference image. Now, I want to see how well that works because, of course, that would be nice because then you will get a 3D LUT that you can export and use on your camera. And it is apparently a LUT that you can also use on non-Panasonic cameras. So that should be quite interesting if it works well. In general, I like how much effort they seem to put into their apps, because it's really trying to bring together the device we all use the most, which is a smartphone, with the camera and add usability here. Now the LUMIX Flow app is really something that is trying to bridge post-production, pre-production, and even set monitoring. There's ways of doing like storyboards and shot lists within this app and then kind of like connected to your camera and stuff like that. I really want to dive into that because I think the idea is right and it's really trying to help you in the planning of your productions and kind of connected to the actual stuff that you're shooting, which is very nice if you get that from the camera manufacturer. But yeah, I mean, this Magic LUT thing is something to check out, and it's in the LUMIX Lab 2.0 app, which is free. And I probably try it also if you're not a Panasonic shooter. I'm curious how it works. There were, as I mentioned, there are also firmware updates for the S52, S52X, S9, GH7, and G9 II. And I mean, it's nothing major. There's a lot of usability stuff that was enhanced and new focus controls, faster startup for the cameras, which is good, but also DJI RS4 compatibility. Now, if you remember, actually, when I was researching the article, I completely forgot about it, that they 2 years ago announced a cooperation between LUMIX and DJI, and we didn't really ever hear about that again, to be honest. And but now we see closer integration with their gimbals. We heard I read some comments on forums that that the compatibility of the RS4 with the LUMIX cameras was so in terms of what you can do. I'm still not sure if you can pull focus now, or to be honest, with the built-in focus wheel on the RS4, but it seems to now finally allow record and focus control from the gimbal directly. How well that works, again, I haven't tried, but it's fine. It's nice that it's finally there, but you don't need additional cables anymore. So basically, this probably runs through Bluetooth like it does with other manufacturers like Sony and so on. And of course, with the RS4 and in general DJI gimbals being the most widespread gimbals out there for sure, this is nice to have. And yeah, the interesting thing with the firmware, you can now also reverse the manual focus ring direction. So probably if you switch from Nikon to Panasonic, that's going to be helpful for you. Yeah, it has a lot of enhanced monitoring support, and of course the integration with those new apps that I just mentioned. And yeah, so basically this is now out, free update for all those cameras. Now available on their website. Yeah, I just want to mention briefly, on the weekend I published an article on Sora 2 versus Hollywood. Now, we did report about Sora 2 when it was released, so basically now more photorealistic generative video from OpenAI, but the big news here was that they kind of released a app called Sora 2, which is like a social media app for AI slop, like generated AI videos that are all fake, basically. And I mean, they have like a watermark, but yeah, a lot of that stuff already went viral, because the thing is that they didn't really care about copyrights in the beginning. They initially announced, and that's what this article is about, that there's going to be an opt-out process for copyright holders, which is crazy. It's kind of putting the whole copyright thing on the head, which is usually an opt-in process. Like if I want my the rights to my whatever copyrighted material to give to OpenAI in order to use this, I have to give my okay. But no, they said, actually, we basically generate everything, but you have to tell us if you don't want it. So what happened is you had tons of videos. Maybe I can show one here of, like he had Super Mario suddenly getting, like stopped by the highway police and like driving off and stuff like that.
So cute.
It's you have Michael Jackson stealing stuff from. I think it was something like a KFC. It's crazy, like completely insane stuff that looks absolutely real. And of course, none of that was actually okayed by the rights holders. So there's a whole, and then they backpedaled, and you think almost like, is this a strategy now? Because you kind of like expose people to the extreme, and then you kind of, like you always, you're getting the ground ready for what's happening, but you do something obviously illegal at the beginning by kind of allowing that, and then backpedal, because then people are already exposed to the fact, they already saw some videos that look convincing. They're already prepared to the fact that this is something that's kind of normal now. Like it's like it's insane. I mean, it's really crazy actually. And yeah, so that's a discussion on that. There's a very, very good video from Casey Neistat on the whole situation, which I can really recommend. He did such a great job. He's so good at explaining something complex in a very, very entertaining way, and he made such a good point about the whole situation with one of his latest videos. So yeah, just check that out. It's also embedded in the article, Casey Neistat's latest video. And yeah, so just give it a read and check this out. I think it's an important thing we need to deal with, and that also just puts more emphasis on the way that this is technology that is going to stay. I know a lot of people in our audience are completely adamantly against anything generative AI related, but I think it's like the train has left the station. People have to get accustomed to this, and it will find its way into normal productions. It will. It is already happening. And what we're trying to do with a lot of the things we do, and for example, also the the latest MZ course from Drew Shirazi is talking about ethical generative AI. So you are able to train these models on your own footage, on what you did, in order to enhance your creative vision and not steal anybody else's copyright. It is possible. And I would advise everybody who is in this industry to learn about these things, because we hear more and more people are losing jobs to AI. It's happening. It's happening all the time, especially in the commercial space. Jobs are getting canceled because the agencies themselves try to do something with AI. But the thing is, if you don't know how cinematic language works, how filmmaking works, you're not going to get a good result with that as well. So it's just deal with it, learn it, and put your own creativity into this. And I think then you can be at the forefront of a movement that is happening, and it's already making a lot of inroads into everyday work. There's also this talk that I gave, just mentioning this again, which is exactly dealing with this a creative usage of also AI workflow tools in everyday productions. And that's a talk that I give at the Build Expo in New York. It's now online. You can watch this. It's also embedded in this article again, because it's all about constructive and creative work of AI without giving up your creativity but enhancing it. All right.
Okay.
Last but not least,
Apple.
some updates from Apple, which is basically just spec bumps to a couple products. So they basically unleashed the M5 processor into the world. Now they spec bumped the MacBook Pro 14-inch with an M5, the basic M5. There is no M5 Max or Ultra yet. The funny thing is the 16-inch and the higher spec models are still using M4 Pro and M4 Max. It's funny that they didn't announce all of them at the same time, so probably it was ready, the basic version of the M5, and they just wanted to get it out. That basic version of the M5 is now also in the iPad Pro. That's the iPad Pro that I reviewed like 1.5 years ago when it came out, the M4. So now basically the same model came out with the M5 in both sizes. But yeah, basically, I mean, I don't even know honestly why you would need a better processor in an iPad. I mean, it's even if you use it for editing, it's not like, I don't think you will feel much difference. Apple is showcasing things like on-device AI models that you run on your computer. Very specific use case, and I don't know who would do this on an iPad, to be honest, but still, like it's replacing the old one for the same price, so it's out there. And it is saving, I think it takes less power, which is always good for devices that are running on battery, that you gain in battery time. But the more interesting thing is also more niche, but more interesting in terms of spec bump, is that the Vision Pro has been upgraded from M2 to the M5 chip. And that's interesting for various reasons. First of all, a lot of people, we've heard it again and again, that the Vision Pro is not selling as well as Apple hoped, and for many months there have been rumors that production has been halted, and a lot of people misinterpreted that for the product being discontinued, which is not true. But now this proves that they're still behind it, so they upgraded. It's the same thing. I mean, it's the same Vision Pro as before. The hardware is exactly the same, just with a much faster processor now, which should give you like 10% more pixel accuracy, so more detailed vision inside the Vision Pro, and faster loading times for apps and stuff like that, which makes a difference, because when you have that thing on your head and you're waiting for an app to load, it's not like you can look at your phone like you would usually do or something else. You have to like wait for it to load your app, and this is now faster. Now, the interesting thing is, of course, that we see with Meta's latest successes with their Ray-Ban glasses and so on, that Apple seems to be looking into this more like glasses type thing as well. So let's see what that means for the Vision Pro. The only other thing they upgraded here, they have a new headband, which makes it much more comfortable to wear, because the original headband, that was more for, the one that only had a strap at the back. is really painful to wear after 10 minutes. Now they had another one with a top strap, which didn't look as sexy, so they didn't use it in any of the ads. So now they made a sexy, more comfortable version. That is the standard one. And you can also use it and buy this for, I think, $100 or euros to also upgrade your prior Vision Pro. So yeah, but other than that, I mean, it's the question where things are going. We see Apple is doing a lot of work around getting people to produce more immersive content. We saw everything that we reported about with the Ursa Cine Immersive. Very closely with Apple. Blackmagic worked on that. They just, right now as we are recording, they are running a 3-day workshop in Cupertino, which is also streamed online, which we reported about immersive video production, which is free. So they really want to get people to produce more immersive content.
Should we do the next NAB in an immersive way?
Sure. Why not?
Why
it's
not?
like shoot it with the Ursa Cine Immersive and then have a few people be able to watch it.
Let's wait for the pocket immersive camera.
Yeah. So, but I think this is more of a sign that for them to say we are still behind this product, we're still working on it, but the lack of change in the hardware, for me, kind of makes it feel like, and there's also been a Bloomberg report, and usually Mark Gurman from Bloomberg is usually very well informed when it comes to Apple news. It seems like they are probably shifting some efforts internally towards a glasses project. What that means for immersive video remains to be seen, because if you move to actual glasses, you don't have full virtual reality anymore. So you don't actually see, like in the Vision Pro, the transparency mode, it's 12 cameras on this thing that films everything around you and gives you the illusion that you're looking through the glasses, but you're really just looking at high resolution monitors. Now with actual glasses, you look through glasses, you can get prescription glasses, and you just have something that is kind of projected into the glass. The question is, where does that leave the existing Vision Pro in terms of full coverage immersive video? I think those products, when they come out, will exist in parallel, but we will only find out probably in a year or more from now. But it's interesting that all these companies are really trying to look for the next thing after the smartphone, and it seems to be glasses now. 10 years after the Google glasses, which failed, right?
Well, actually, we saw this. We haven't published yet this piece of news about the Honor mobile phone with like a.
Yeah, well, I'm on this. Okay. I'm on this.
It's kind of a DJI
gimbal built into your phone.
Exactly, which is much more closer to what I would like to use than all of this Apple thing. But hey, who am I to judge? Good.
Good. Let's wrap it up here. I think there was a long episode. Thanks everybody for watching. Stay tuned for a lot more. I think when you see this, hopefully most of the reviews we talked about are out. If not, they will be published very soon, and we'll update the links in the show notes to link to those reviews. And tune in next week for more Cine news. I think you'll be in LA for Adobe Max. So let's see if it's going to be the two of us or just me making some monologue. But have fun in LA and see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Leave a comment or email us at podcast@cined.com.
Thank you guys. Bye.